The Cab Chat Show. Oh, I fucking love these geezers.
Taxi!
Thunderbirds are go. Yeah. Welcome to Cab Chat, episode 275, for those that doubt whether we're the longest running podcast in the world. And just before we start the show this week, I just want to say that if you haven't already subscribed, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the bell notification to make sure that you get notified whenever we release another video. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, hit that follow button so that you get notified. And
this is the greatest taxi podcast in the world. So show your support. If you believe it is, hit that button. And if it isn't, then find one that is the greatest taxi podcast in the world, and then we can review.
Yeah, if you think there's a podcast that's been running longer than Cab Chat, please find it for us, because we can't find one, as we said in the previous show, because effectively, in various forms, this has been running since 2011, but as Cab Chat since 2014. So 15 years old, but 11 years as Cab Chat. So, what we're going to be talking about in this week's show, we're going to be talking about Parade Street, and we're going to be talking about Addison Lee, surprisingly, and also a private hire driver called Driver Denny. We're also going to be exploring Uber drivers' earnings, and also looking at a new app that is upsetting both Uber and Lyft. And we're also going to be talking about road closures in London. Why are we surprised at road closures in London? So, welcome to Cab Chat. I'm Jamie the cabbie, and he's
Tom the taxi driver.
You didn't seem sure about that then. You didn't seem sure about who you was.
It's just knowing, like, even when we was reeling off like all the topics of what we're going to talk about, I can see them there. I didn't know if there was going to be a slight pause where I could interject and then sort of, you do the duo where you bounce back and forth, like Parade Street instant penalty charge notices, Addison Lee, etc. Yeah. So it's still waiting for those kind of natural breaks, and then we'll get the rhythm. We'll get there. It's fine.
So, Parade Street, Tom, you found an article about Parade Street and about the pop-up rank that keeps that's a bit of a bone of contention amongst cab drivers in London, because there's those that obviously create the pop-up rank and think that they're not doing anything wrong, and there's other drivers that think that, well, they're not. It's not an official rank, so if someone hails them just in front of the rank, they're going to stop and pick the passenger up. Don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
It's an odd one, isn't it? Like, there's always going to be passengers there, but just because there's demand there doesn't mean a rank instantly goes there. There's lots of places in London where you go to and you know that you're more likely to get a job from it, but you don't need to put a rank there. And obviously some drivers want to rank there, and the LTDA and many other unions have basically said, look, there's a lot of tickets coming in about people that are ranking there. That was kind of the first sort of stage of it. Then they put the cycle ones up. Presumably, I mean, I don't know if that was just their cat and mouse, not cat and mouse. It is cat and mouse strategy, isn't it? Yeah. Or their whack-a-mole strategy of filling the problem, because it's quite easy to do so. So whether they needed a cycle lane there or not, who knows? But it's a nice way of kind of stopping it. And then, of course, drivers would then rank in between the cycle ones. I mean, cab drivers just love ruining it for everybody, don't they? I mean, it's a similar thing to what's happened at Harrods back door, where it just creates a problem. The council does something, and then it just creates more and more problems. So much so that the unions have said, look, if you get a PCN here, we're not going to represent you. That was the last of this. And then this article that's come out, it was 2 days ago at the time of recording. It's probably going to be a couple of weeks by the time this episode goes out. This is an article on Taxi Point, by the way, that TfL and the boroughs are going to work together to ensure that if any driver ranks there, they can get an instant penalty charge notice, no questions asked. I guess similar to if you're sat in a box junction or something like that.
Yeah. So the answer to the question is, if you regularly work that area, don't rank there. It's not a taxi rank. It's not an official taxi rank, unless you want to run the gauntlet of getting a instant PCN. Then cruise, as they say, just cruise past. And if someone hails you, You can stop. There's nothing
Yeah.
stopping you from stopping and picking a passenger up. The only problem is you're causing traffic congestion when you're ranking there, apparently, according to the authorities.
The buses can't turn off of Eastbourne Terrace. Obviously, it's quite a narrow kind of street anyway. Drivers, drop off there as part of people getting to Paddington. So it does just cause all manner of nightmare. It just doesn't look. It's just not a good look. Like we've said about before with social media and other things like that. It just doesn't look good. I know times can be slim, especially, January, February times, and we all want to get work from somewhere, and you feel like, right, I've come out here to work, I need to get some money. It's just not a good look. So for me, I'm all for it because it just looks unsightly. I'm sure the Hilton would love to have a rank outside of their hotel because that would help the hotel immeasurably. But if they can't have one, then it's only going to cause a detriment and an eyesore to people in the area, their guests, nearby residents. So I don't blame the way this has gone because, yeah.
I think it was inevitable in the end, wasn't it? Because there's been so many warnings come out that, they would issue tickets and things like that, and it hasn't really happened. And I think now it's got to the point where the authorities have actually felt, well, we've got to make a stance now and we've got to actually do something about what they see as a problem. And obviously the cab drivers that are ranking there don't see it as being a problem. But, when, the authorities see it as being a problem, they're going to act and they're going to do something about it. And this is their answer to the problem. They're going to be issuing instant PCNs. So if you are one of those drivers that does stop and rank on a pop-up rank that's there, then you run the risk of getting an instant PCN and you've got no one to go crying to.
Yeah, and it's similar things happened, as said, on the back door of Harrods, right? There's a lot of space that you could sort of extend the rank artificially by yourself by getting in like a parking bay, and if there's no cars parked there, and go around the corner. But now all approaches to that, they've like banned a no right turn. Then they put a box junction in to stop people being in that area, and then they've put a no U-turn on that, I guess at the start of like Walton Street, that bit there. And it's the whack-a-mole strategy, but you can see why these boroughs do this because it's not a good look. If you can't make it on the rank, just drive on. Sucks.
Yeah.
But we all have the same.
It's one of them things, isn't it?
Same luck, yeah.
It's one of those things. So don't do it. Don't do it. Anyway, when we restarted Cab Chat, it was a while ago, before I actually asked Tom, I spoke to Mac the Cab, because as you know, I started doing Cab Chat with Mac the Cab, and I said to him, I fancy starting Cab Chat again, and he said, I haven't really kept up with what's going on in the cab trade too much, even though I've worked a bit, but he said, so like, I'll do the odd show with you, but I don't think I'm the right person to do it regularly, which I knew that was going to be his answer anyway. I said to him, I'm going to start it again. Just after Christmas, towards the end of January, really, I sort of phoned him and said, how are you? Yeah, okay, yeah. I said, you've been watching Cab Chat? Oh, have you restarted it? So I went, yeah. So, right. I'll have to watch it then, right? So then he watched it, and I got a message, and the first message was, now up to date with all the Cab Chats. Fucking brilliant. Right? And then I put, thanks, mate. Really appreciate your comments. And he's put, you and Tom work very well together. The fact you have been driving a cab longer than he has been on the planet, with lots of laughs. It's a great show of how the system of knowledge works back then and now. You've got to remember that Mac is dyslexic, so the way he writes things is a bit all over the place. And he's put, and like a granddad and grandson, sharing something like an apprenticeship of life, and shows even coming from different education experiences, the knowledge of the knowledge works. Tom, with his media background, works brilliantly with your radio broadcasting, music history of keeping a live recording show going. With news and reflections, also fully understanding of the London taxi trade over the decades, you can count how long you have been driving a cab not in years, but in decades. So I tip my hat to that, which I think was a really, really nice message from him.
Yeah,
And,
thank you, man. Yeah.
We will get him back on the show at some point, but yeah, I thought that was a really nice
Definitely.
message. And I went up to Oxford doing a training day to do tours of Oxford with a Blue Badge guide, someone who's recently qualified as a Blue Badge guide, Mark Morton. So well done, Mark, for getting your Blue Badge. Really, really great achievement. He actually, I didn't mention anything about Cab Chat. He just said to me, he said, I really like what you're doing with Tom, with the podcast and that. I said, oh, you like it? He said, yeah. He said, I think it's absolutely brilliant. He said, really great. He said, tell him from me, won't you? And I said, yeah, of course I will. So, yeah, thanks for the comments, Mark. Really appreciate that. It's great. And obviously, I think they're probably three people that are probably our three most avid watchers on YouTube now. Mark Morton, Mac the Cab, and Aziz.
Oh, man. I got a lot of time for Aziz, man. That man. What a guy.
Yeah, really nice bloke.
He's becoming very quickly my brother in the cab trade. He always says about, like, he's my older brother, basically. You're my granddad.
Oh,
he's my older brother. Well, that was Mac's words, not mine.
He's about the same age as me, isn't he? He's not that much younger than me.
But I'm taking Mac's words, not, Yeah, well, you're old enough to be, you're my dad, and then this is my brother. How about that?
Well, yeah, because I'm not old enough to be your granddad. Definitely not. No, definitely not. So, yeah. So you found another article about an Addison Lee driver. This is good news, I think.
Research from the show. Big thanks again to Taxi Point. So I've got to credit all these because there's some good articles in here. I just come across this. Didn't realise this. Many of you will remember that some of the private hire firms, Free Now and Addison Lee, they announced a driver recruitment, well, not a driver recruitment scheme, but a knowledge, I don't know, initiative is probably the best way of thinking about it, whereby they will support you as a private hire driver, but also to go ahead and do the knowledge. Now, Addison Lee have just celebrated their first, this again, it's probably about 2 weeks old by the time this comes out, but their first green badge driver. So this is a driver, where's the name here? Marcin, who's spent 18 years with Addison Lee, has completed the knowledge of London in 21 and a half months whilst continuing to work. Now, that's a pretty serious achievement, really, I think, to be able to do that, part-time alongside actually driving as well.
Yeah, definitely.
To get through the knowledge that quickly, that is awesome. So the Addison Lee Knowledge School, which I think is in West Drayton, it's a partnership with Wizan Knowledge School. So perhaps as a testament as well to Dean of Wizan and, how good that works. I think Dean from Wizan even would say that if you're a private hire driver, that's usually a bit of a disadvantage. Not because of what you already know about London, etc., but often your job doesn't have, say, like if you work a 9 to 5, as an instance, like when I did the knowledge, I worked a 9 to 5, right? I knew exactly when you could go out and study. Whereas the issue with private hire is that I think the allure and the attraction of always going out and earning a bit more, or you think, oh, I'm out driving, I'm technically out studying, So sometimes I think he said that sometimes some of the private hire drivers do struggle for that reason because they confuse studying with working or working with studying, Obviously, this gent's definitely not done that because 21 and a half months, under 2 years, that's some of the sort of rarest kind of examples of getting through the knowledge, really. That shows quite a determination to get through the books and get out, really, yeah.
Well done to that man. I mean, that's an achievement that he should be really proud of. 18 years as a private hire driver, it shows he's not just a fly-by-night or sort of someone who's just stepped into the industry to as a stopgap while he finds something else. He enjoys the job, and he's just thought he'd take his career to the next level and become a black cab driver.
That's what there's a quote here from Tony Marson, who's the MD of Comcab London, which obviously has the partnership with Adley as well. Marcin's journey is a fantastic example of how experienced drivers can build on their time in the industry and take the next step in their careers. We're proud to have him join our fleet and look forward to seeing him thrive as part of the Comcab community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Tony's a nice guy, actually. He's I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever met Tony. He's a really nice fella.
Yeah, we both know him. He's within the Handshake Club.
The Handshake Club, funny as you're making us sound like Masons now. I've just found an article.
We're not.
This is quite an interesting one on Taxi Point. Ashford Borough Council defends intervention over unlicensed pub taxi service.
I did see that, yeah.
Now, this is quite good news, actually, because Ashford Council has defended its decision to intervene in a charitable pub taxi service operated by the Flying Horse in Smarden, stating that the scheme amounted to a licensable private hire activity and could not continue without the appropriate authorisations. Now, this is good news because it means that councils are actually enforcing against people that are operating as a private hire service without a license, which is really good news, because well,
I was just looking at like what you was about to come with next there. Like, this is really good news because
no, it stops the unscrupulous people from trying to get in via the back door. It stops. Years ago we probably In the 1990s, we had a service start up in Greenwich. They bought a load of old London taxis and painted them all yellow. They put mobile phones in the front where the luggage bay was. Now, you could hail one of these, yeah? And you'd pick the phone up and speak to the dispatcher at the company. And he would then send a yellow taxi to pick you up. You weren't allowed to get into that one that you'd stopped, but he would send another one to come and pick you up. They was totally unlicensed, and, in the end, what was happening was whenever a black cab driver saw one of them, they would just literally follow them around with their light on, yeah? So that as they stopped for the person, there was no
they
point
would just
in that
get the job.
They might as well just get in the black cab behind.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so that was the way of sort of capturing the work back from them. But obviously they were slightly cheaper. They was a bit cheaper. Some people were still using them, but in the end, the authorities came down on them and closed the operation down, and they disappeared. But there are those that always try to push the boundaries. The biggest app in the world has tried to push the boundaries for years and years and years. So, it's good that licensing authorities are actually coming down and stopping people from offering services like this. There was a proliferation of this a few years ago, just before the pandemic, actually, where a lot of people were offering services as taxi or private hire on Facebook, on various Facebook groups, offering to when students, especially around sort of university towns and things like that, when students needed to get to the airport and things like that, they was offering their service. So these people were totally unlicensed. So it's good that councils are actually looking at this, if there have been complaints made, and actually coming down and cracking down on them to stop that side, stop unlicensed vehicles from working, basically.
Well, that is a common theme with a lot of the articles that Perry does put up on Taxi Point, is that like it will be like Manchester, Liverpool, something like that. It just says, person not licensed taxi driver was caught acting in a non-licensed way, whereas either we don't see that in London because we're all just above board and we're licensed and it's just or everything's gravy, or it gets pushed under the carpet, or it doesn't get enforced at all. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's one of those things, which brings us on nicely to Uber earnings. Now, there was a driver that posted up a video on TikTok about the difference. He said, basically, he's heard people talking about, that Uber take between 20 and 49% commission on every job. So he showed a job that he'd been offered and that he'd accepted. The job was being offered at £16, or the passenger was being charged £16 for the job. Yeah? How much do you think he got paid for the job?
£16. Even if historical, it used to be like the average, or what people would say Uber's commission was 25%. Now, Uber doesn't work on a flat rate. It fluctuates massively. You know, if it was 25%, 16, what are you talking, what? Scratch back maths. Tom can't do maths. I mean, that's about £4,
yeah,
12 quid. Yeah.
12 quid he should have been paid. He was paid £7.54. Now, what he was saying was...
Less than half.
Less than half. So what he was saying is that's far more than 49% commission that Uber are taking. And what he was saying is that if drivers accept jobs like this, the algorithm, Uber's algorithm, assumes that it's okay to only pay drivers that amount of money. Yeah. So the next time it would offer a job like that, it would offer it a lower fare again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if someone accepts it, it would offer it a lower fare again. You know, it's a classic race to the bottom, really. So, you know, he was encouraging drivers to not accept these jobs like that, to reject them, because he said the only way you're going to force the commission back is to keep rejecting these jobs so that the algorithm then thinks, oh, well, the drivers won't accept that, so we need to offer them more money to do that job.
Yeah, like they used to do this years ago. The drivers would have a similar principle, really, because it's all of Uber is based upon code and tech, basically. So that's what all these kind of interventions that drivers have done over the years. Drivers used to all get together on Facebook and they'd say, right, at 6 o'clock during the peak rush hour, we're all going to mass log out. And then what then happens is that when people start requesting rides on Uber, it looks like no one's online to work, which then means it will put an increased demand on the services, which pushes the prices up, which means we earn more.
They created a surge price, yeah.
An artificial surge, exactly. So, I mean, they've probably got around this now because it is quite an innovative company, really. Interestingly, actually, it's an okay listen, but the CEO of Uber, Dara, was on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett.
I see a clip of that the other day.
And to be fair, the majority of it's about an hour and 40 minutes. The majority of it is about his time as a kind of a CEO, his upbringings and that. I mean, it's a great story of the man, the CEO behind it, because this guy was able to turn Uber from a company that didn't really turn a profit into a profitable machine. So you can't really fault him as a CEO because he's got an acumen, a good back record of, you know, turn Expedia into a ridiculously profitable company. But it was just some of there was a few little nuggets in there of kind of sentiments of how they approach drivers and work and stuff like that. So a few things that stood out to me is that, and it's kind of almost your point of what drivers are doing here, is that you basically sound like Uber's basically just code. You know, they're just a giant code, basically, is like how all their app and infrastructure works. So it's basically them plugging in and just constantly refining it, making the algorithms more smarter, better, etc. When it comes to people that work there, and I think this is probably more the software engineers and such, and I'm paraphrasing here, I can't get the exact words right. He was referring to the fact that if you don't pull your weight, they'll pull you in and say, like, look, we're a demanding company, we're going to push you harder, and, you know, if you're not up to the sort of challenges that this company wants to overcome, then, you know, you're going to go out the door. And then they said that you didn't use the word employer, obviously, but the largest cooperation, I guess, of drivers, I think it's about 9.5 million drivers and couriers they have worldwide on their platform, which is bigger than the Chinese army, which I think the Chinese army is about 4 million maybe. But yeah, so it's just because he was questioned on, you know, what are you going to do with the AI autonomous vehicles? He didn't actually have an answer. He said, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't actually know.
Which brings, I mean, I can't remember whether I've actually mentioned this before, but you know, we was talking about podcasts earlier, and you know, Cab Chat being the largest podcast, and one of the podcasts that you found was one called Taxi Talk. And I listened to one of their episodes, which was quite interesting, where they spoke about devastation that Uber has caused in the market around the world. Because what they were saying, especially in the UK, where Uber has basically destroyed most local taxi or private hire companies. Mm-hmm. And all of these local taxi and private hire companies were part of the community. They were actually part of the community in the area in which they worked. And to the point where if there was an event going on or something like that, these local taxi and private hire companies would get involved and raise money for charities, local charities and things like that. And if you called a taxi or private hire vehicle in your local area and you was a regular user, you'd get to know all of the drivers because they were the same drivers that, all, that worked for the company. So you'd get to know all the drivers. They said that, so they was actually part of the community. They put back into the community, yeah? And they was involved in the community. They said companies like Uber do nothing, absolutely nothing. They said Uber destroys communities, absolutely destroys communities. They don't put anything back into the community. They do not do anything for charity at all, yeah? And you will never, ever get to know the drivers because you'll never see the same driver twice. Because, as we've said in previous podcasts, you could be in London and you might get a Wolverhampton driver pick you up.
Yeah.
You might get a Hertsmere driver pick you up. You could get a driver from anywhere. You might get a driver from Pakistan pick you up, for all we know. But, I mean, that's not going to be the case because you've got to be licensed somewhere to get on the Uber platform. But then, as we know, Sean Paul Day did upload a Chinese takeaway menu as an insurance document to the Uber platform, and it got accepted. So, so they give nothing to the community, and they have no interest in. I mean, if they've got no interest in their own employees, and the fact that if they don't pull their weight, that's it, you're out the door. Yeah, they've got no interest in their customers, their clients. Because all they are is a cash cow to them.
And that was the kind of interesting thing about this documentary, this podcast as well. I can't remember the exact origin of it, but he was born and raised in Iran. And I think one thing that went through his life was that he was sort of used to the idea of the Uber CEO, used to the idea of like that stuff can be taken away from you. That I think their family home or whatever was was obviously quite a harrowing sort of upbringing, really. But then I think Stephen Bartlett posed, I don't know if he posed a question to him or if it's just something I drew up in my mind, but he's kind of almost doing the same thing to some of these Uber drivers' livelihoods, that it seems very weird or antithetical that he is a CEO of this company and can, effectively change the narrative here, but, and support the drivers there or go in the direction which they're going in, which is AI. And he almost seems to, even though he has kind of, scars of a similar kind of thing in his own life.
So let's take it to the extreme example, yeah? I mean, there's 60-odd million people in this country, yeah? How many taxpayers are there in this country? Working people that actually pay tax? 20-something million? 22, 23 million people? So we know, in fact, that before Uber came around, that there was over 250,000 licensed hackney carriage drivers in the UK. That's without private hire drivers. Now we know there's 110,000 private hire drivers in London alone. So you could assume that around the country there are over 500,000 taxi and private hire drivers. So if we take it to an extreme that robotic vehicles come in and they completely wipe out every taxi driver and private hire driver in the country, that's 500,000 people that no longer pay tax. Where is that income going to come from? How is this country going to survive losing that many taxpayers?
That income that comes in and goes to the robotic cars, where does the output of that, where does the tax revenues generated from that go?
Well, it doesn't go to the UK.
Who is self-employed within the UK, who pays taxes within the UK, keeps that money within the UK economy effectively.
Yep.
But if it goes elsewhere.
Exactly. And that's my point exactly. So we know for a fact that Uber pays very, very little tax in the UK and virtually no VAT in the UK. The tax man is going to lose a large chunk of its income. The Exchequer is going to lose a large chunk of its income. How are they going to replace that? Where are they going to get that money from? Are they going to tax those that are still working? even more. Now, don't forget that not only are they going to lose this large chunk of their income from taxes, but all of those 500,000 people are now going to become unemployed.
Yeah.
So they're all going to be claiming off of the government unemployment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and income support and things like that. So not only do they lose it, but it's costing them more. So maybe before you license these autonomous vehicles, you need to have a long, hard think about what the consequences are.
I think it's already been done. It's going to come. My only sentiment, if we've now sort of moved into every kind of like podcast and kind of conference at the moment always leads into this topic of AI, and we've gone into it on this one. Reassurance to anyone getting back into the cab trade. I know I've kind of gone, or anyone coming into the cab trade, and taxis specifically or taxis elsewhere, is that our greatest weapon is that we are decentralized. Yeah. We don't have an app that controls us. We're always directly interfacing with the passenger. So yes, work levels can drop off, but so long as there is still someone out there who still wants to get into a human car, that cannot be controlled by a third party or middleman. If you are an Uber driver, then obviously they could just turn off your account, terminate it instantly. You're always going through someone else. So long as we remain driving around in our cabs, we might turn over less money. We can still be there and still be a thorn in their side. They will never be able to replace that. So long as who would have thought decentralization, which has probably been our greatest weakness in the past, is what's going to save us.
Well, could save us. This brings us on to the TikTok that driver Denny put out. Now, driver Denny is a private hire driver. I'm not quite sure where he's based, actually. But he's a private hire driver who works on Uber. And I'm going to insert a clip into the video of driver Denny explaining that, in fact, New York City have put the brakes on autonomous taxis in New York.
Drivers, this might be bigger than people realise. New York has just stopped driverless cars from expanding. You know, the cars that say is going to replace us, the drivers. Now, they didn't ban the actual cars themselves. They've put a brake on the part that allows them to operate without a driver. And that is a massive deal. Companies were getting ready to roll out the robo-taxis. The lawmakers have stepped in because of safety concern, job concerns, and the fact that there's no public trust in them yet. So the expansion has been shut down before it's even started. Now, why is this important, you might think? Well, New York is one of the biggest taxi markets in the world. When New York slows something down, other cities pay attention. So while everyone online is shouting how Uber drivers have finished, New York's just went, nope. Now the question is this just a delay, or are cities realising that drivers cannot be replaced as easy as the tech company promises?
So I think the sentiment that driver Denny's saying there is that the technology's there. They don't dismiss the technology. It's just more the fact that they don't want it without someone in it, because that's employees. Well, not employees. That's a wage at the end of the day. So kind of your point that you mentioned.
It's basically, yeah. I mean, they're worried about job losses and things like that, which is in the end loss of income for the government as well.
Well, you've got to remember as well, though, that very uniquely in New York, they've obviously got past experience of this with when Uber came the first time.
Yeah,
and it really screwed up the New York taxi system, the medallion system there, because they still have to do some level of kind of knowledge or taxi sort of training, but not to the degree that we would do. And the people would argue there's not much difference between an Uber driver in New York and a New York taxi. So, but what that caused, though, it caused the prices of the medallions to drop, as we know.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of drivers lost a lot of work from it. And of course, that caused a lot of pressure on New York. And a lot of drivers took their lives over that as well. So I think they've already had this in the past. And I think they know just how cataclysmic that could be.
Interestingly, the guy that I picked up from Heathrow yesterday has actually got an apartment in Manhattan. And he was saying, he said, I'll use Uber as a last resort. He said, Uber in New York he said, is diabolical.
Really?
He said they are absolutely diabolical. He said, I always prefer to use a taxi. He said, especially if I'm coming into the town from the airport. He said, I always use a taxi. He said, but some places I go to, he said, it's hard to get a taxi. So he said, so then I revert, I have to use Uber to go back to the airport. He said, but the price difference doesn't matter to me. He said, it's the service. He said, the service from a taxi is always far, far better than Uber. Yeah. And he said that the yellow taxis in New York are actually gaining some ground again. And there's a resurgence of use of the yellow taxis in New York.
Yeah, and well, they're quite an efficient system as well. And I will report back on this because I'm actually off to New York specifically for this purpose at the end of March. I'm going to be making some cool YouTube videos about how their system works. Direct comparison with the UK system or London system and be like, right, what works about theirs, what doesn't? Because they have stuff like most of their taxis, I believe, are rented from a proprietor, and they have a specific changeover shift, a bit like what used to happen in London, where you would have it for a certain amount of hours, then you've got to take it back to the garage, and then the next guy takes on the taxi. Apparently, they do it like around rush. I'm gonna find this all out, but one customer told me they do it during rush hour or near then, and there's this weird period where it's really difficult to get hold of a taxi.
Apparently so, yeah. And they all sort of go in at the same time. You think they would stagger it, wouldn't you? They all
this garage goes in at this time. This garage goes at this time.
And if you go back to the old show Taxi, you can see it where they'd all turn back up at the garage at the same time. I don't know how true to fact that is, but he said that they're making a resurgence and they're gaining some ground again against Uber, which is good news, really. But yeah, he was not. Which is unusual for an American. He was not very complimentary about Uber. And he's got a house in Seattle and an apartment in New York. And yeah, he wasn't very, very complimentary about them at all. None of the, Uber or Lyft, really. He said they're both just as bad as each other.
I guess various use cases, right? If you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere and you've got no way of getting around, then yeah, you're going to have to revert to them. So you can't fault anyone for that if you live out in, a small town in America somewhere, and then you get your kind of, I guess it would be a local Uber driver really to drive you around. But when you're in the big cities that have the infrastructure, that have good transit networks, then, stick to the people that are there exclusively doing that in the proper vehicle that's got, all the bells and whistles really.
Sorry, that was someone that just keeps trying to ring me, and I've just sent them a message saying that I'll call them back shortly because I'm a little bit busy at the moment.
A little bit preoccupied.
I'm a little bit preoccupied at the moment. So while we're on the subject of Uber, it's quite interesting that in America, this is another clip that I'm going to insert for you.
Uber and Lyft are not happy because there's a new rideshare app in New York City that's breaking all their rules. Now think back to New York City in 2015. Hamilton debuts on Broadway. The Pizza Rat is going viral. And Uber hits an inflection point, rapidly dismantling the city's yellow cab industry, sending the price of taxi medallions into freefall. This was really bad for every taxi driver in New York City. Back then, the taxi industry fought hard to stop it, but rideshare companies were well-funded and had a consistent and effective counter-argument. We're not a taxi company. We don't even own cars. We're just a tech platform connecting riders and drivers. Fast forward to today, and that positioning has largely worked. Uber and Lyft dominate New York's ride-for-hire market. They're fully licensed, deeply embedded in the system, and as they've grown, fares have steadily climbed as well. But now the disruption playbook is being run on them. See, Empower works differently than traditional rideshare apps. Instead of taking a cut of every ride, it charges drivers a flat monthly subscription fee to be on the platform. Drivers set their own prices, and riders pay drivers directly. In short, riders are paying less and drivers are making more. The TLC, which regulates Uber and Lyft, says that Empower is illegal because they're not operating within the city's current rules. But Empower says we're just a marketplace, a peer-to-peer platform connecting riders and drivers. Sounds a little familiar, right? Uber and Lyft are now defending a regulatory status quo that they once worked so hard to break themselves. And the question is not whether Empower is illegal, because under the current rules, it is. But since when has that ever stopped a new rideshare company coming to New York City?
You can't
I
make it
found
up,
that-
can you?
I found that quite funny actually, and I thought it's that's karma, isn't it? That really is
Yeah.
karma. You know, it's what they've actually done coming back to bite them in the arse. And, you know, I'd like to see more and more drivers go on that Empower app. And if the riders are paying less and the drivers are earning more, it's a no-brainer, really.
So break that down again. It's a monthly subscription model, but who pays who what? So presumably to go on it, you as a driver pay.
You pay the subscription model. You pay the Empower app. And
but then the taxis, journeys, is up to the customer, or like they just put a recommendation of pricing? I don't know.
I think you know I think they're offering it to taxis and private hire or whatever.
I guess it's probably that, isn't it? It's like it algorithmically works out. This is how far it is. It's a $15 journey or whatever.
And
you
this is the closest vehicle.
You keep all of that. They're just after that monthly subscription model.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting model.
Yeah,
that's good work.
And just pay.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer because
well, you can be quite agile as a startup, really, because it's quite simple because you've got your recurring revenue coming in. I think this is what we always said in London about Taxi App and that. Like, if you have a recurring revenue, you can then work out, right, how much it costs for us to keep the app alive.
Yeah.
How much do we actually need to take? And you go, cool, we just need like 5 drivers, rather than basing it upon the work demand, because they'll still get the income whether the work's there or not.
Yeah.
To a degree, obviously, but interesting.
But I just think it's quite funny that Uber and Lyft, who were trying to circumvent the regulation,
now it's
calling upon those same regulations to defend their position.
Yeah,
I think that's hilarious.
It's like, we came in through the back door, we cut a hole in the fence, we're in now.
But we want that hole closed up. Close the hole up quick.
No one else, don't come in.
Don't let anyone else in. Quick, close that hole up. Yeah, I just think it's absolutely hilarious, and I really want to see that Empower app do well. To be honest with you,
well, that kind of competition's good because it then takes you back to the traditional model more, the old school model that already works. And I think we've seen time and time again with these things is that the only way they can make a sustainable profit is they have to take a charge somewhere, which then inflates the price of the service, which then takes you back to the original service, because the original service was more of a sustainable pricing because no one was taking a cut from it.
Yep, exactly. But I just thought that was quite apt and it just really tickled me. Anyway, traffic road closures in London, and this is something that we're going to be featuring in future podcasts.
Oh yeah, we want to do a funeral for the roads.
Funeral for the roads. It was some idea that Tom came up with some time ago, and he didn't really expand on it. But then he's sort of rattled around in his brain, and he's come back out again. So we're going to do one.
I'll do.
You're going to do one now,
Well, you tell us about what closures. And
right. So at the moment, Piccadilly Underpass has closed. It closed on Monday, the 23rd of February, eastbound again, until March the 20th. What on earth can they be doing in there that needs doing? Because eastbound, it was closed for months and months and months. And all they did was put up some silly little fans and put a bit of concrete along the edge with some big paving stones, some big curbstones. And why that took them so long to do that, because when they closed the westbound carriageway, they literally did it in a month. The same work that they'd done in the other side, in the eastbound, that took them 6 months. And now it's closed again for another month. So we can expect that once they finish doing the eastbound, they'll then close the westbound for a month. You can guarantee that. So that's closed from the 23rd of February until the 20th of March. And then I believe from the 22nd of March until April, no specified finish date in April, the Westway is going to be closed. Now, I'm not sure whether this is only westbound or whether it's both ways at the moment. I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging to find out. But apparently this is because of the bad state of the road surface in the eastbound carriageway. Now, you might have seen while you've been travelling along there, a number of cars pulled over on the side of the road with blown out tyres because the potholes along that way, that section, are so bad that the tyre fitting services, I think they've just got their van parked on the hard shoulder, permanently now, and they have their deliveries of tyres straight to the Westway. Where would you like the tyres delivered this week? The Westway, eastbound, please. Yeah, I was going along there the other day, and there must have been 7 cars with blown out tyres along on the hard shoulder, and there was 3 vans fitting tyres to cars there. So this brings into question the fact of whose responsibility is it to maintain that section of the road? Now, it used to be part of the A40 network, so I would imagine it would have come under the Highways Agency, but I'm not sure if it's TfL or Highways Agency. But if it had been maintained properly in the first place, there wouldn't be a need to close it because it would have been maintained. They've just let it get into such a bad state that they're now going to close it, which is going to inconvenience thousands and thousands and thousands of people every single day for probably a month. So why are our roads getting into such a state? Why are they not being maintained properly by the local authorities? And this is all authorities all around the country. This is happening everywhere, not just London. This is happening absolutely everywhere. If there's a whole pothole appears, patch it. Patch it up. And the other thing is, why do they need to close the whole thing? Why can't they just do one lane at a time? They do it on other sections of road. On the A2, they'll close one section, one lane, and they'll do that. They might have it going down of a night just to one lane from 3 lanes, but they'll repair one lane, and then they'll repair the next lane maybe a couple of nights later, and then they'll repair the next lane a couple of nights after that. Why can they not do that? Why does it have to be a complete closure? It's just like, there's been lots of skits on TikTok and things like that, where they say, if we're going to start roadworks in a month's time, when do we put the road closure in? A day before, a week before, or a month before? A month before. Yep, that's the correct answer. Yeah. When do we remove them? Prime example for you. Just down the road from where we live, they decided they was going to put up a 5G telephone mast. And to run the power to it, they had to dig a hole across the road. Yeah. So they had someone come along and put the cones out to close one way off, and they had a contraflow going. Yeah. And they dug half the road and laid the cable. And then they moved the road closure over to the other side of the road. And they dug that side out and finished that off. And then for some reason they had to move it back to the other side because I think there was something wrong, so they had to dig back up again. Now, obviously, the company that had been employed to put the cones out had obviously been, told that they could have the cones there for a certain amount of time. Now, they'd finished doing the road closure, yeah? But the cones were still there, yeah? It gets worse. Around here, whenever they put cones out, they employ a security guard to sit there 24 hours a day.
Oh my words, that's what it's become now, yeah.
24 hours a day, right? So one night, this security guard decides he's going to close the whole of the A20 for 2 hours, yeah?
Wow.
Right? Do you know what he did? He moved the cones from one side of the road over to the other side of the road, yeah? And put the lane closure on the other side of the road. There was no reason for it.
Wow.
The works had been finished like 4 days beforehand. But he moved it to justify them being there. He moved it all over to the other side of the road and closed the road for 2 hours to do that.
Surely,
the whole A20.
I do wonder, because I know with obviously a traffic management thing, they have an order from local council or whatever to then to give them permission to go ahead and do it, right? But anyone else, I wonder how much this ties into the highway code rule or the law that the only person who's allowed to stop and manage traffic without obviously one of those orders, which is what this gentleman has effectively done, is a police officer or a lollipop man or lady. They're the only people, I believe, you think in the highway code. Is that not the case?
No, you can go and do a course now, and a traffic management course, whereby it gives you the authority to stop traffic or put cones out on the road and things like that. Obviously, like for emergency repairs, you don't need a traffic management order because if there's a gas leak or something like that, it can just come along, put cones out,
Right,
and dig up the road.
There's my naivety there then, yeah.
The madness is, years ago, like someone was coming along to dig the road up, they'd have the cones on the back of their truck and they'd just come along, pull up, get the cones out and put them out. It seems to be a separate company that comes along and puts them out, and they put them out like a week beforehand, and causing them. Just how many times you go down the road and there's cones on the road, and you think, well, what was that for? There was nothing there.
or it's like really over-engineered, like miles in front of, well, not miles, but like yards in front of where they need to be. Like you think, really? I was watching a short on a TikTok or something like that, and it was a bloke in the 90s, like obviously the pothole repair, someone from a council or whatever, and literally it was like a busy slip road, like coming off of like somewhere or going onto somewhere with big trucks screaming past, and he literally was just like, I don't know what it was like a bag of tarmac or whatever it was. He was just pouring a bit in, just stamping it down with his foot, then getting out of the road. Truck comes past, comes back, does a little bit more, and then truck comes past. The comments were hilarious. It was like, 1990, this is evidence of the last pothole that was ever repaired in the UK or something.
Well, sometimes when I'm on my way into work, I come along Lee High Road, and they had like a contraflow on Lee High Road. And I'm looking, where's the roadworks? Where's the hole? Normally there's a hole in the road. Where's the hole in the road? There wasn't one. Yeah? It was in a side road.
Yeah.
Yeah? And it was about 40 foot from the junction. But they coned it off all the way down to the end of the road. And because they coned it off all the way down to the end of the road, yeah, they didn't just have, like, traffic lights on that road. They'd put a freeway system in with a contraflow on Lee High Road.
Yeah.
And closed Lee High Road down to one lane because this side road had a hole dug in it. And you think, this is health and safety gone absolutely berserk.
I was trying to capture a few with my Ray-Ban Metas out and about in town. There was one like on the back of, I can't think of the name of the street. I think it's at Gillingham Street, which joins, it's off the back of, not Victoria Street. I'm not
Gillingham Street.
Gillingham Street, and there's like an entrance to a Sainsbury's car park around there and a few bits. There was quite a wide bit of road there. The bit that joins you over to where like the passport office is, or you're getting through there. And there was a freeway there. And I was looking at it, and the freeway was literally to navigate around a not bollarded, what's the thing, like the little fence, the plastic barriers. It was to navigate you around that was no bigger than a transit van.
Yeah.
And it was like the street's more than wide enough. You can see exactly where it was no different than just pulling around a parked car, basically.
Just madness. It's
just absolute madness. Freeway, but then the traffic coming out of the car park wasn't signal controlled, so that's pointless. And then to make matters worse, where they parked the van, that just artificially extended what you're trying to get around anyway. But
it just seems to be that it's there to create as much congestion and inconvenience to people as they possibly can.
Yeah,
it's not like how can we lessen the inconvenience and the congestion? It just seems that doesn't seem to be in their vocabulary. It just seems to be, not how can we mitigate it? It's like, how can we possibly cause the most amount of inconvenience and congestion by digging this little hole as possible? Come on, please come up with solutions. We want traffic jams and reaching 2 miles down the road for a little hole that we want to dig. How can we do that?
Well, it's clearly the utilities companies, the traffic management companies that go, cool, how can we get the most money out of this job? Brilliant, we'll put a freeway or four-way there because we can rent out all these bits and pieces and it's going to cost more. Whereas the majority of the time, it just needs to be a give way to oncoming traffic and just use common sense.
Yeah. I've always said I wish one thing that I'd gone into after the pandemic was renting cones out. Because I think I'd probably be a millionaire by now. Because
I think like Conway, or not Conway, but like some of these traffic management facilities don't need yards anymore because they never need to store anything.
No,
they're always rented out.
Well, on the M20 where I am as well, they've also got Operation Brock, which is the old for the lorries. It used to be called Operation Stack years ago, where they'd stack all the lorries. It's called Operation Brock now. And, every school holiday, they close the M20 for the night. And, they close it for about 3 nights to put all the cones out, yeah? And then at the end of the school holidays, they close it for 1 night to take them all away again. But they don't actually take them away. They just kick them to the side of the road.
Yeah.
And they're left there all year round now.
And it just looks so unsightly when those sorts of things.
Well, the thing is, now in the last, I think since the pandemic, it's been used once, right? It's actually had to be used once. So someone's earning an absolute fortune every single school holiday to put Operation Brock in and then take it away again, and then put it back in again, and then take it away again, and then put it back in again, and then take it away again. And you think, when are they going to stop paying them for doing this? Because it's obviously not needed. Why don't, if it happens, if they can put it in that quickly, like overnight now, if it happens and you can see that there's going to be a problem, get them down and get them put in. And then as soon as the problem disappears, take it away again.
And you're much better off paying them an emergency rate to come in and do that rather than just having them on retainer. But it's no different than obviously what Mr. Elon Musk did with the US government for a bit, DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency. It's obviously just way too much stuff that's already been baked into the system. They can't be bothered to go and remove, because it's like, well, just the way we've done it. If we remove it, then it might cause this problem, so we can't really. So
anyway, I think we've rattled on enough for this week.
Closures. We're going to have a funeral for the roads. So, Jamie.
Funeral for the roads.
Somber music, please.
Somber music, please. We'll put some, we've got to find some somber music that is copyright free.
We can soon generate that. So, okay. Funeral for Gordon Square. We gather here today on Gordon Square's old way to mourn a fallen road that quietly passed away. Ashes into dust, through root into adjust. From carriageway to cul-de-sac, because a sign said it must. It carried cabs at pace through Bloomsbury's old grace. You'd enter here with purpose and leave this very place. It weathered war and rain, Victorian horse and train, decades of congestion, and still it would remain. But not a crack or scar, nor pothole split it far. Just 2 calm words in black and white. No access. Au revoir. No trumpet, no parade, no barricade was made. Just lawful link on metal plate. And so the road did fade. We're told it rests in peace, that progress won't decrease, though traffic now does penance on streets that beg release. So lower down the map, fold up the mental trap, and may each sat-nav gathered here intone its final tap. Recalculating. Amen.
Now, I hope you're not going to ask me to do the next one.
I don't mind doing them. I think they're quite fun.
That was great. I loved that. I think that was really, really good. And I'm going to, if Riverside doesn't clip that, I'm going to clip that myself and put that out. I think that was brilliant.
Of course,
well done, Mr. Tom, the taxi driver.
If you don't know what one I'm referring to, that is Gordon Square. As you go from, let's say you're on Gower Street and you want to drop at the Euston at the Old Rank, you can't get to the Old Rank by Gordon Square. So you can't go past the Bloomsbury Theatre now. You have to go beyond it, take the east side of the square, join back in at Ensley Gardens and get right into Gordon Street. So we're going to be doing more of these. These are funeral for the roads, old passages that we would use. And that was just one I quickly knocked up, but I can make it a bit more personalised next time for some of the fun we would have on some of these roads.
That was great. I love that. Anyway, you've been listening to Cab Chat. If you do like this show, please make sure you subscribe down below or in your podcast app. Hit the follow button and give us a thumbs up. We like thumbs up. We don't like thumbs down. We only like thumbs up. I've been Jamie the cabbie, and
I've been Tom the taxi driver.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Be lucky.
Be lucky.